Thank you to whoever just gave us our first thumbs up on that video.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Autoplay.
Who's got autoplay on YouTube?
Oh.
Yeah, for wow.
Well,
Oh, I guess that was me. Sorry.
Yeah.
no, it's cool.
I thought I had shot it. Yeah.
So I have a lot of sort of questions, Quinn, for you, but also anyone who has questions to throw in the Q&A, please, by all means, do it.
Right. I gotta. Can I start?
Yeah, sure.
I was totally blown away remembering that we played that live once. We played it live once, and then we did the entire thing in rehearsal, just the guitar and the vibraphone part, and then we got into the concert hall for one rehearsal with So Percussion. And then, there were a lot of times like when, I'd find myself in a polyrhythm, not a crazy one, but I'd find myself in a 2 against 3 or 4 against 3 against the percussion ensemble. And I was like, fuck. And then, so we went back to the rehearsal room after we did the dress rehearsal at Princeton. And then we're like, oh my God, how are we going to survive this? But then we just like reviewed everything against the score. And I think we had like a really good debut performance, but it was like I think to date, it was the highest pressure dress rehearsal we'd ever had.
It was short. It was like you guys had an hour with those guys. Right?
We had an hour. We also, I think, we had like a solid 10 days to learn the piece in the beginning. Like, I think we had a week and a half to actually learn the piece, like from when we started rehearsing it to the first performance, which was a very silly thing. But
I want to use this opportunity because we have it. I want to ask Damon what he thinks of Quinn's piece.
Oh, thanks.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. I really enjoyed it. I listened to it earlier today, and I'd heard it years ago too, and it's grown on me more with repeated listenings as well. I find that it really it was a different experience listening to it the second time today than the first time. But I really appreciated in your description. Well, I like the old text, but I appreciated the comparison to brutalist architecture. I thought that was pretty. That helped me like find a way to feel my way into it, which worked really well for me.
A friend and I mentioned that about my music in general, but I have a number of pieces, including this one, that kind of choose chunks of time before I choose the material that goes into them. And sometimes I'll adjust back and forth, but it's sort of like this portion will last 5 seconds, this portion will last 12 seconds, this portion will last 1 second. You know what I mean? Like, so you like create a mold and then you kind of pour it into it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the connection in my mind. So that's cool that reading that note and thinking about it was useful in listening to it. That's really cool to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, you see the bones of the structure of the piece through that image of like the functional part of the architecture is laying bare, so you can experience just what's necessary.
Yeah,
I like that.
How do you decide those chunks of time for a piece like this, or just in general? Is it something you sort of like vibe out, or is it like kind of weirdly mathematical, or like?
Well, it's both, and this one's not that weirdly mathematical. I mean, there's like these sort of golden mean ratios that are in it that I just like. So when the part heavy comes in, I mean that's a golden mean ratio of the whole, and the golden mean is like when you have a ratio of something, and you normally you think of it in terms of like a visual ratio, but I'm thinking of it in time. So it's the ratio where like the whole, so like the ratio of the large portion to the whole thing is the same as the small to the large that you see in a lot of architecture and so forth. So like when heavy comes in, that's there. And I think there's often a play between those kinds of proportions and even cuts, but leading up to that point, I think it's mostly just sort of vibed out. sort of like, I think, because the first time that the heavy part comes in, that's like 5 seconds or something, right? I mean, it's just the shortest one, and it's supposed to be this like, what the fuck just happened? Well, this really kind of like pastoral kind of textures going on,
I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to ask Quinn or Damon a question. Now that we listened to everything on the docket tonight, now we just get to go down memory lane or answer the Q&A. So please indulge us. And Quinn, you had an awesome program note, and I don't want you to feel redundant or anything, but is there anything else you'd like to share about the creation of the piece with anyone listening?
I mean, not about composing it, but I mean, I enjoy talking about, I mean, unless there are questions about it, but I enjoy talking about our production of it, which was
yeah, tell me about that.
Well, you were there for part of it. We had a pretty epic 3 days there in the studio recording those percussion parts in Princeton, and then Travis recorded all the guitar parts on his own, and he did the mix. But
I remember getting texts when that was happening, when Andy was playing like the percussion quartet parts. And it was like, I don't know. I didn't know what was going on. I was only getting like, I was getting texts like from Quinn and then from Andy about it, but it sounded difficult. And I was really happy with how it came out. But it was crazy. It was like recorded at Princeton in like a rehearsal room or something? Or
no, in the recording studio.
It's a studio. It doesn't have like a kind of a proper live room, but it was just the two of us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was also like, I recall being like sicker than I'd been in years during those sessions.
I didn't remember that.
I didn't realize that.
I didn't remember that either until I had forgotten that, but then I remembered just like how uncomfortable that was. That was a fascinating stretch of days. But
so you flew to New Jersey and did that while you were sick?
Yes, which feels like a different time. But yes,
I think you were. It was like around Thanksgiving time. Were you not?
Yeah, something like that.
Traveling home anyway.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you, Quinn. Like listening to this piece again, like what's it like for you to like? Because this was what 5 years ago, 6 years ago when you wrote this.
It's 20. I think I wrote it. Yeah, 6 years ago, and then we
recorded it. What's it like for you to listen to it again and kind of re-experience it now, like 6 years later?
I mean, for me, it's like memory lane. There's just all these things that I'm remembering about the experience of writing it, recording it, hanging out with you guys, which is, not a very specific response, but there's like a lot of memories coming back from it that I've been, enjoying thinking about a lot. Yeah, in terms of like stylistically, like, these days I play a lot of improvised music and I do a lot of stuff with electronics. So like it is, this is on top of like seeing the score again too. Like I don't spend a lot of time thinking about or looking at notation. So I was like, man, I used to spend all my time looking at and thinking about.
Yeah, did Quinn and Damon have either, like, since these pieces, have both of you kind of like strayed away hard from notation? Like notation in the way that like the score is presented that we just saw?
Not hard, but that's interesting to hear you say that you've gone a similar way, Quinn, because
is it like our fault or just like,
what's that?
Are we to blame for that?
Well, it just couldn't get any better than this, so why bother writing music?
Yeah, why bother writing another one?
I mean, no, I notated a lot for my band, but it's rarely is it a whole piece, and I've never understood the score fetish. Well, I do understand where it comes from among some composers, because it's just so hard to get a satisfying performance, so that you want to have like some perfect final object, and that becomes the score instead of the music. But I think that's a weird way to approach music making. So I don't care much about scores. I don't produce, like I write as much, and it's true even of this piece, like I write as much as I need to get the idea across, but if I'm going to talk to the musicians, we'll finish it there. And so you guys finish so much of my piece in that way. Like looking at the score, it's like not quite all there. It needs to be a back and forth with the performance, but I still notate things for the band, but it's always just a means to an end, and it's not like there's any completed finished score that represents any whole thing.
And it's less about the relationship between a composer and a performer than it is sort of like communicating an idea that's like sort of removed from like the classical tradition, right? Of like a composer presents a finished score to any player and then they will realize it.
Right. No, I mean, that's not gonna, I mean, no, it's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
I think of notation as a tool, means to an end.
The point of notation is to save time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, otherwise you know, it's if it's faster to hand somebody a sheet of paper and then teach them the whole thing, then you should hand them a sheet of paper, you know, like sort of.
Yeah,
that's exactly. Not, you know, it's not my idea. I had a teacher that mentioned that before, and I was like, that just sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's how I've thought about it myself. Yeah.
That's it's so funny to me because like these are the only two pieces that like Andy and I have. Well, maybe there are others, but these are the two that I can think of that could appear in the back of like a late 90s Guitar World magazine, like as an interesting transcription from start to finish for guitar, because it's like it's just constant playing. It's constant playing. And what's like kind of tripping me out, like just from like the Guitar Nerd Guitar magazine stuff, is that both of these pieces are in standard tuning, which if you've ever seen Andy and I play live, like I play everything in a different tuning. Like we go places.
If you've ever wondered why Travis has like a ton of guitars on stage, it's not like a vanity thing. It's like they're each in a different. Yeah. They sound different when you strum them.
Yeah, when we go to like play shows, or when we went places to play shows, like I'd borrow like 7 guitars, you know, and then just put every one of them in a different tuning so we could fire through a bunch of pieces on a repertoire program. Because I think there's nothing better than the sound of an open string. So I usually like tune a piece to whatever makes sense. But both of these pieces are like the only things in our repertoire that are like in standard tuning, like could like appear, like most people that were interested in like guitar and drums could probably look at a score or to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Definitely on the drum side, definitely Damon, definitely not Quinn.
Like, wait, what?
Because when I listen to Quinn, like I picture it as like one person on a drum set, even though it's a percussion quartet.
Well, it's interesting, like because Damon's part like was very collaboratively created, like, and it sort of like was a framework in the way that like a jazz chart would be. Like jazz drummers don't have like every note specifically notated, but has like the hits notated and like the direction and the contour. Whereas like every note that you saw on like Quinn's score, I played, or like one of the 5 of me's played. And they often don't line up and they sort of sound together like you're like rolling drums downstairs. Like when there's like the different 16th notes against the like the weird polyrhythms are deliberately against each other in a way that could like never really be improvised in a way that would sound as cool to me. So like I could imagine someone like learning Damon, like your drum part by rote, just like listening to it could like could do a drum cover in a way that would actually sound probably cooler. That would be awesome. But like for Quinn's piece, it's such a different experience as a percussionist, to say nothing of like the vibraphone part, which is like a different kind of like solo instrument on top of it. But there's something very classical percussion about Quinn's percussion writing that was like a little bit less in Damon's piece, even though the effect was I think kind of similar, which is pretty maybe the guitar more than me.
And Damon's piece was like pretty formative for us as well, because like the percussion rig was extended to have these prayer bowls, and then
not prayer bowls, like sort of thrift store bowls.
What are they?
Bowls?
They're just metal bowls that you get at a thrift store. Danny Clay got them for us.
Oh, I thought they were
like mixing bowls.
Yeah. Oh, there
were prayer bowls too. I wonder what that section was.
I gave you the gold ones the brass ones.
Yeah, there were the brass ones, but also there were two types of bowls. I forgot about that. One is the prayer bowls that Damon gave that we use in a bunch of pieces since, and the other like the like the stuff that sounded like trash was like sort of cheap metal bowls that were flipped on upside down.
I had always wondered about
those are the parts where you're like muting.
Yeah, you know, like there were like the fills, like like on something that wasn't a drum was like upturned metal bowls.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's funny because like for the past 9 years, when people will ask us like what's in our battery of like for percussion writing, we'll be like, oh, we got salad bowls, we got Damon bowls.
Oh, the Damon. Yeah, it's true.
Uh,
The Damon bowls show up in a lot of things, actually.
That's nice to hear. I wondered what was happening with those.
Um,
shouts
close.
to
It was not quite. I mean, they're wooden drumsticks on sheet metal bowls.
Yeah, I know what Jacob's talking about though. Yeah, it does sound like little wood on little.
Oh, so the prayer bowls you gave us, the one that's like I most associate with you, Damon, is the one in the beginning, the tiny little bell. Like at the very beginning, of that piece is like ding 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 ding,
Oh yeah, that.
really high, and that I've used a lot since. But yeah, you accumulate stuff as a percussionist or just hoarders. Like
Mhm.
everything is just throw it in the studio and we'll use it again at some point.
uh,
But yeah, I mean, like that was another reason. Like Quinn's piece is extremely traditionally notated, or extremely like instrumentally for a percussionist. It's like anything you can find at like like any percussion quartet could play this. Um, and it's like just some drums, a cymbal, and like bowing and a bow. I think.
yeah,
Which
it's meant to be pretty small. It's 2 toms, a crash cymbal, and then 2 players have glocks. But there's also the annoying thing with the bowed cymbals, where everybody has to have kind
yeah.
of a disembodied one
Mhm.
that sits on the snare, where the snare is sort of a resonator. But aside from that, it's meant to be a pretty small setup. And some of that was like, I mean, I would have done that anyway, but some of it's just like what. Yeah, I think I asked for 3 toms first, and so I was like, well, can you do it too? I'm like, yeah, sure. So, which is like, I mean, when there's 4 of you, like, I mean, that's just 1 extra tom. That's 4 extra toms. I mean, that adds up pretty quickly.
It
But
still seems, sorry. I was going to say it still seems stylistically informed by drum set.
it absolutely is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels that way to me as well. Even though there isn't like a traditional like trap kit on the piece at all, I
Yeah.
still picture one.
Oh yeah, and there are snares. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2 tom snares. So it's like a 4-piece kit without a kick, basically, and without a hi-hat. Kind
Yeah, I mean, like it sounds that way to me too. It sounds like just like giant fills. Like there's no beat, but like the is like
Yeah,
all
at the
very
end, like at the
yeah, they
end,
do nothing but fills. Yeah.
like I air drum it, but uh, I just wonder like we've had some repertoire, or we've been fortunate enough to like to have people get interested in some of our repertoire, and then play it, and so that like Andy and I are very proud when we commission a piece that gets performed by other people, because it just gives the piece a longer life, and the composers like are really happy about it, and then also it's cool just to pass something on to other people to teach and learn and interpret, and it's always very humbling for Andy and I to hear other people play the stuff that we took a crack at and see the different decisions they make and be like, oh, I wish I did that. But it like these pieces haven't we haven't really pushed like them, or I think like shown people these pieces lately, and I really would like to like just take another pass at my part in the score and make them available or push them a little bit harder to other groups to play, because believe it or not, there are other guitar percussion groups, which is rad.
Ooh. Yeah, usually the limiting factor in people playing the rep is the guitar. Like
Yeah, I mean,
there's
because
aren't.
it's like it's like a concert percussion is at least like, or the art of percussion, like as we know it in this ensemble, is taught in some ways in departments where like classical electric guitar is kind of like a gray area, even though it's not particular. Like if you know how to read music and you play guitar, you can handle it. But I
Yeah.
like, um, could you ever picture like another group like playing this piece, Damon? Because I know that I could.
Well, it's more intact in the score than I remembered. I mean, there's more directions and specificity than I remembered putting in there, because I remembered so much of our dialogue and your interpretive ideas. So I think, yeah, I think it could be. Yeah, I think there'd be some communication. between probably, myself and the players, and you, and possibly you and the other players, to figure out how you pulled out, because I can't remember, how you did everything.
Yeah, and I really do want like other people to like try it. And so when Andy and I, when we do residencies and stuff like this, like both of these pieces, I really want to take with us in the future, to try to get in the hands of students. Your piece, North Pacific Garbage Patch, like it is pretty, like it is like notes, like you play notes. It isn't like kind of weird. It isn't about like the gear you have or anything like that. It's classical in that it's like it's a note performance. You do need to be able to loop and change sounds a little bit, but like I would expect an 18-year-old to be able to get through it. I think, and it's the same thing with Quinn. Is like whenever we find a band with 5 drummers and 1 guitar.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to pass on a question that I got to Quinn,
Yeah.
and I can't remember who asked it, but I was, because the one about how you sort of personally experienced the bridging the gap between the meditative sections and the heavier sections, because in your piece, I really did experience those open sections, like the beginning, as meditative, rather than anxious, and I love the sound of those sort of open ninths that you start out with on the vibes and the guitar. And so it really feels like the first time, it feels like you're really smashing into a wall, and that vacillation is it's brutal. And I know we have the brutalist metaphor, but I'm wondering how you experience it emotionally.
Oh, emotionally.
Or I guess the question was asked in the context of like how you're expected to experience it, but I'm more interested in how you.
I mean, the first thing I think of is like when I hear your piece, like the relationship in your piece seems to be like it transitions fluidly between those. To my ears, maybe I'm wrong, but mine is just like you're changing now. You know what I mean? There's no transitions. It's kind of like cinematic or Stravinsky. I mean, it's just like, it's a block sort of form. But I guess how I experienced those emotionally. I mean, it's just a matter of like, for me as a composer, trying to make the time when the loud portions re-enter is, unpredictable. By kind of getting to a point in the more meditative parts of it, where you kind of lose time, and then it's like, guess what? Time's back. So I mean, as far as like a specific like emotional state, I'm not sure what to say about that, but I mean that's what I think of.
Something like like maybe not emotional state, but like the characters of the piece. I always think of yours, Quinn, as having like 3 really well-defined characters, and the success of it when we did it live felt like keeping those like changes like in of those 3 characters like kind of a secret almost, is that they need to be surprising to do what they're
they need to be surprising. Exactly.
Yeah, you got to kind of poker face your way through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just wanted to ask one more time, because I guess we're well over an hour, and somehow we're gaining people and not hemorrhaging them from the attendees. So does anybody have any final questions for Living Earth Show, for Damon Wakekiss, or for Quinn Collins? Chirp, chirp.
Oh, this has been so fun.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys. Damon, thanks for glad to hear your music.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for
joining. What are y'all's? Do you all have next things coming up, music coming out, projects you're working on? Where can we direct people?
Okay. I have my band Jack of the Clock is releasing an album on Cuneiform Records next year, and I am also working on a project of microtonal songs with Ben Spies of the Mercury Tree. He was commenting earlier, and so that's really been exciting. That's been kind of a quarantine era bi-coastal project that we've been kind of pinging files back and forth between Vermont and Portland, Oregon. So that'll be out hopefully sometime in the first part of 2021. So those are kind of my new projects right now.
Cool.
Cool.
What you, Quinn?
I have an electronic piece that's going to be in another Zoom concert that's for actually a Valentine's Day concert. That's it's for this group in Philly. I'm in Philadelphia. Network for New Music, and they're. I have an audio recording of a story about Germantown, which is a neighborhood in Philadelphia. The way it was like I was told about it was that they were love stories. So I was sort of imagining like, I guess the first place my mind went was romantic love stories, but that's not what this is. It's about just sort of like, well, I won't say too much about the stories about exactly, but I felt more comfortable about that than like getting somebody's romantic love story and like potentially ruining it with my music. But it should be, yeah, it'll be cool. But that's their network for new music. And it's a Valentine's Day concert. So there's that. And then my duo with Paul Schutte, Llama Llama, which is like a electronic duo, mostly a modular synthesizer thing. We're trying to put a record together, which I don't know if we're gonna make it. We were hoping for a Groundhog Day release because that seems like a good day to release something in the COVID era.
February 2nd.
Yeah, we'll see.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
So it's Llama Llama.
Yeah, it's spelled kind of funny.
Funnier than it's already.
Oh, I sent it to just the panelist. I should send it to.
It is funny.
Everyone. Panelists and attendees. We've got a couple things you can find on Bandcamp that's through a label called Belts and Whistles that a friend of mine, Layla Andu, and I run. So we have 3 other recordings on there, but
awesome.
This one's, the working title is Static Mindfulness Content. And we're thinking
I like it.
Something new agey, but we'll see.
Yeah, New Age is back.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. And yeah, also speaking of Bandcamp, if you want to hear any of the pieces that we played tonight, either Damon's or Quinn's, they're up on our Bandcamp. I think Courtney dropped the link in earlier tonight.
She did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there it is again.
There's the Jackalope Hawk. Hey. Cool.
Yeah, tles.bandcamp.com is a fine way to get both of these.
And I think we're gonna leave the YouTubes.
We are.
Yeah, so
we are.
It'll continue to live on.
Yes. And Travis, what do you got coming up?
I got nothing. I got a birthday.
It's true.
I got a birthday coming up. I'm a New Year's baby. So yeah. That's it. True. And then we're recording, a million things because we're doing this digital.
Like what? Thing. What like
What are you trying to get me to say? I'm recording Lyra. Yeah, I'm recording Sam Adams' piece, Lyra, and I need to get it done.
That wasn't the implication.
There's a lot of internal.
we have a bunch of stuff coming up.
Pressure for Travis to finish this record, but it's gonna happen.
No, we have a bunch of stuff this year. We'll be doing 2 of these every month. Where can people find more about what we're doing? Where can people?
We can check that out. And then I'm also well served to remind everybody that you get free downloads if you're an Earth person. If you want to be a subscribing member to our digital season, we always give like the records and stuff to those people gratis. So please head to www.thelivingearthshow.com/donate to become a member of our digital season. And we love you forever.
Peace.